A few years ago, one of my friends randomly gifted me the game Risk of Rain 2. I knew nothing, was not very interested, and honestly, didn't like the game. But I think that's mainly because I felt obligated to play it. I played the game with him a few times over a few months, but never on my own, and eventually we just moved on to something else. Fast forward a few years, and I get a new friend group going. They had just bought Risk of Rain 2 and asked me to play with them. I hesitantly said alright and re-downloaded the game. And you know what? This game goes hard. I was wrong. Pretty much instantly after re-downloading it to play with them, I just wanted to play it more. And actually the first friend that gifted me the game in the first place also ended up gifting me the DLC when he realized I was finally getting more into it. Then only 3 or 4 weeks later, and I 100% the game, which is mostly what inspired this video. So first, I gotta talk about the characters. I love them. The character design is great. The whole game's art style is great. The characters feel so smooth to play for the most part. I think some of the DLC characters feel a bit clunky, but that's probably just because they're more complicated than the base game characters. Like, specifically False Sun and Chef. I don't dislike them, but I will also never play them again unless they add in new achievements that require me to play them. I also don't really care for the melee characters just because I don't really see why you would choose to be melee over ranged in a game like this. But they were all still fun, except for the actual hardest achievement in the game to me, that being Mercenary Ethereal, as Mercenary complete a prismatic trial without falling below 100% health. It's the only achievement that took me multiple sessions to get, and if you are struggling with this achievement, just go to @cabbage123 on YouTube. They're insane, and literally do this challenge on every prismatic trial that comes out, every 3 days, and without them showing me a good route, I don't think I would have done it at all. So yeah, shoutouts to them. Getting more into characters I like. I'm actually only going to talk about one, because he doesn't get enough love. Mul-T. Mul-T is not a great character, but is my favorite. He's simple, he's fun, and he's good with every item. There isn't a single item in the game that I think is bad on him, aside from some blues, but the blue items are generally not worth it in my opinion because each of them have a huge trade-off. So yeah, he excels at nothing, but can do just about everything. Mostly since you have 2 different primaries and 2 different equipments. My favorite setup on him is just using the nail gun and power saw, because that combo is why I think every item is good on him. But as long as you have a ranged option and then the power saw in the second slot, I think it's good. Doesn't have to be the nail gun, it's just my favorite one of the ranged options. Which takes me to what makes this game so great and so special. You can just use whatever you like, and it works. By no means is this game perfectly balanced, but it has an insane variety of viable builds. More than any roguelike I've ever played. Which the game absolutely needs, because unless you use a certain modifier called the Artifact of Command that lets you pick your items are entirely randomized. There's very few items that are unviable. Like, there's the Focus Crystal that's really only good on melee characters because it gives you increased damage at close range. But it still works on ranged characters, it's just not great. Or like, the Lost Seer's lenses, I think are just trash, because it lowers your chances to crit by a lot, but gives a small chance to instantly kill a non-boss enemy. Which would be a very good item if it didn't consume your lens maker's glasses, which is the main crit item. But I don't think the trade-off is worth it because of just how important crit is. Not just with the damage, but with how it synergizes with other items. Also, my favorite thing about the items in the game isn't even what they do. They could do anything. I don't care. It's just that whenever you pick one up, you could visually see it on your character. And after a long run, your character just looks goofy. And it's just fun to look at. The game's got variety in more ways than just items and characters, though. The areas, the enemies, the artifacts, which are the modifiers, and the game modes just give it even more. I think my only real problem with the game is the boss of the Survivors of the Void DLC just feels really insignificant. I had to beat it to get the Void Fiend character, and then after that, I never had a reason to go back. I hope sometime they give some reason to play against the boss multiple times, because I like it, it's a cool fight. There just isn't much reason to actually do it. Which, speaking of the bosses, might as well go over the other 2 main fights. First is Mithrix, who is the final boss of the main game. He's a very cool fight, and I love that you can also skip the area entirely to keep your run going. He's pretty easy for the most part though, but I do have one issue with him. And it's that in his third phase, he steals all your items and uses them against you until you damage him to the point where he gives you them back. Which that phase is both the easiest phase and the hardest phase. Because you have a certain build, like, if you just have too many items, like if you skip the area the first 2 or 3 times and then choose to fight him, you might actually just instantly die in the third phase because of some of the items that just automatically activate. So, yeah, definitely be mindful of what you pick up if you plan on fighting him. The other boss I actually like the most out of the main 3 is the final boss for the Seekers of the Storm DLC, the False Sun. I mentioned him earlier because if you beat the boss with a certain item in your inventory, you unlock him as a playable character. But I've seen a lot of hate for this fight from people saying his animations are clunky and bad, but I think that's a point. Like, I think the way he's animated fits very well with how he looks. It would look weird if the animations were super smooth or something. This guy can steal your abilities from you, and you have to destroy some pillars to get them back, which I find a lot less annoying than stealing your items and then one-shotting you with them. Which, I mean, this boss can absolutely one-shot you too, but you could also one-shot him, because unlike Mithrix, there's no real invincibility that the boss gets between phases. Like, he'll disappear for a second, and then he comes back down, and in his landing animation, you can actually just kill him. So if you get a lot of items, especially when using Artifact of Command to pick your items, this is an incredibly easy fight. Which is kind of my only problem with him, is he's really easy, but sometimes you actually just die, which I guess is kind of like the other fight too. If he had more invulnerability between the phases, or just more health in general, I think he'd be perfect. Another thing that I'd almost forgot to mention, but is just as good as the variety, we got the vibes, alright? I already said I love the art style, but it's more than just that. Like, this game has one of the best soundtracks of all time. There was not a single miss. It's not something I'd listen to outside of the game, but it fits the game perfectly. I really don't think there's anything that they could have done better. Combining the art style, soundtrack, and the simple but still in-depth enough gameplay just gives a vibe entirely unique to Risk of Rain, and it's just incredible. Anyways, yeah, not a very in-depth video or anything. I just wanted to rant a bit about how I like the game a lot. And if you watch me for my COD Zombies videos and never played Risk of Rain 2, I highly recommend it as long as you like the art style. Also, very easy to 100%, aside from a handful of achievements that are either very specific or actually just a bit difficult. So, if you also like to 100% games, then this is a great one. It only took me a little over 100 hours, which for how much is in the game isn't actually much time. I'm not sure what else to say, so I guess I'll make these kind of videos like my Zombies ones and give it a rating. This game's an easy 10 out of 10. Most games I make videos on like this are going to be a 10. I have no major issues with it whatsoever. Love the art style, the gameplay's great, incredible soundtrack. Risk of Rain 2 is fantastic. And if you thought this video was fantastic, or at least serviceable in some regard, please like and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Not sure if I'll make any more Risk of Rain videos, but if you like video games in general, then hopefully you like some other videos I make eventually. Thanks for sticking through to the end. Have a good day, and always be careful when it's icy outside.